Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Science Really Work, the official podcast for the University of Calgary's iGEM team. I'm your host, Khadija Abbas. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Kristin Baetz, the Dean of the Faculty of Science here at the University of Calgary. Prior to her position here as Dean, she was Assistant Dean of Research and Special Projects at the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Ottawa, and was the director of the Ottawa Institute of Systems Biology before that as well. She was a candid research chair in Tier 2 in yeast system biology, and her work has been published in big journals. We'll be covering in this podcast science education, synthetic biology, and how initiatives such as iGEM are shaping the next generation of changemakers. So welcome, Dr. Baetz. Thank you for taking the time to be here today.
Well, thank you for doing this interview. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. So my first question is, as a dean, how do you view experiences such as students taking on hands-on research, like iGEM or just research in general?
Yeah, so research, I think, is so important for a student to learn. It's not the only way to learn, but when you do a research project, you're really putting what you've learned in the classroom into action. And it makes you think in a different way. You can learn anything through a lecture and a book, but as soon as you need to really apply it, think creatively, it's a different set of brain skills, and it replicates more what you're actually going to do in your daily job. So I'm a real advocate of students doing research projects, iGEM. My ultimate goal for 2030 is to have more than 50% of our undergrad students either doing co-op or research placements, because as much as it's awesome, all our great programs and lectures and teaching and learning labs, where a student really learns and has transformative experiences is in a workplace, learning the skills you need to have a great, successful career.
So how does a university support initiatives such as iGEM or students getting into research?
Yeah, so there's lots of different ways the university and the Faculty of Science supports research. Obviously, one is we have nearly 300 professors at the Faculty of Science. The vast majority of them have research projects like NSERC, CHR funded, and we encourage them to hire summer students. And actually, it's really unique. We're one of the first places in Canada that now a summer student could get a co-op credit for doing a summer project. So I think that's amazing, because I think back to my days, I spent every summer in a research lab, and I would have loved to have actually earned some of my credits while working in a lab. We also, of course, those are funded by Pure projects. So we have funding through NSERC, Pure, individual grants. So those are one ways to get involved in research. The other way is through capstone projects. So we have, especially in fourth year, projects through profs, through industry, where teams of students get together and work on a project. And I think something like iGEM is even that next level, because it's not just you working on a project, it's working on a team that better replicates what would happen in industry. So if you go and let's say you go work for a company like Pfizer, yes, you might be a geneticist working on a project in a single lab, but within that lab, you're going to have a manager, you're going to have a communications team. You should be doing this through a business lens. And so when you guys have an iGEM team in a project, almost like similar to when they have the solar racing car projects you see at engineering, or case studies that you'd have at Haskayne, it's you're applying your problem solving in a really different way. And you're doing it within a context of business. And that's really a critical skill for a student to get. So you're seeing the business analysis of the project, the communications part, and then on top of that, the research. Is it actually going to work to create a product to solve a problem? And what's unique so often in research, it's so curiosity driven, discovery based, which is fascinating and fun. But for the innovation economy, we need to be answering questions and solving problems that people really need solutions for. And so that's where I think that iGEM is in that really sweet spot, because for you to be successful, you need to be answering a problem that industry or individuals actually need solved.
Mm-hmm. And I feel the challenges that come with iGEM teams specifically, how do you think that universities support them? Because what iGEM, I think, is also a very unique thing that instead of it's very student led, which is great, very similar to Solo Car, for example, which you brought it up. I'm actually also a part of, so I was like, wow. But I, I see like there's such a unique aspect of iGEM where even though it's student led, it needs so much support from the university.
Yeah.
How, like, for reference, like how does a university and the iGEM teams, how do they come together?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. Every university does iGEM teams differently. And obviously, for you to work in a synthetic biology world, you actually have to have access to laboratories. Like, you can't do this by a thought experiment. You might be able to plan it on a computer, but to actually create that project in the actual prototype to prove that it works, you need access to laboratory space. So that's clearly one thing universities can provide, laboratory space. You normally need a faculty sponsor, and whether that's an advisor to help you get through some basic stuff like biosafety training, access to stores so you can buy the equipment you need to do it. So there's that real big aspect of support. And I think in a U15 in a place like University of Calgary, where we have some of the best infrastructure, the best quality, I would say access to equipment, like really state of the art equipment, you do have a really big advantage. And our ultimate goal is making sure that teams like iGEM can actually access those core pieces of equipment that then you can have better projects and be more competitive. Now, we all know iGEM history. There's a lot of smaller schools who can win these projects too. But I also think it's important when you have a big U15 university like what we have here at University of Calgary, that you have access to equipment that other university students might not get access to. You also have that ability to interact with faculty to really bounce your ideas off of. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? You've got brilliant minds and postdocs, graduate students. So there's a lot of resources that we support you with. And of course, a place like University of Calgary, we have access to the Pure Awards. So that's also part of our financial structure too. And I'm going to throw out in a city like Calgary, whose past, present, and future success is so deeply rooted in science and technology. We are not the province we are today with a $72 billion surplus. We did that because of science and technology, helping with the energy industry. So the city really believes in science. And so there's an amazing opportunity for projects like iGEM and things like solar cars to actually work with the community to fundraise and get support, as you did through Giving Day.
You remember? Oh my, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty good.
Well, it is really important. I'm seeing that, like, for us to do our projects, we need the university backing, especially considering how we're very privileged compared to other teams to have that, to be in such a big facility that has that resources. So what would you say in regards to the entrepreneurial side? How does a university, as your position as dean, how do you support students to pursue a more entrepreneurial path?
Yeah, that is a really good question because
like taking their science and putting it into a business.
Yeah, so I mean, University of Calgary, I think, is unique, and that's certainly one of the reasons I came here from Ottawa is because we are Canada's entrepreneurial university, and it's not just lip service; like it is real. We have the most amount of startups per year the last 4 years in a row, and it's because of the city too. The city is a real, like, there's an energy here. They hustle. They're really involved in startups, creating new businesses. So my mandate, or one of my many mandates, is how do we ensure that every single one of our programs starts thinking entrepreneurial? How are we weaving that into all our undergrad and then eventually our graduate student programs. So I don't think it's good enough anymore for a student just to graduate with a traditional, let's say, biochemistry degree or computer science degree, because for you to be successful, you need different skill sets in today's modern environment. And so we're undergoing a modernization of all our programs to ensure they meet the needs. Our graduates meet the needs of industry. And so we are now in the process of weaving in things like communication skills, networking skills, basic business skills. And a good example of that, in September, we're launching our new energy science bachelor's program. And that is literally unlike any other program in Canada. Even first year, you have mandatory classes in economics. Then you'll have, on top of learning about energy science in all its forms, the students are going to learn about policy, Indigenous relations, communications. Because how can you go out and work in the energy sector without understanding, for example, policy, when an industry is completely tied to the nation's policy on energy? So on the next step is, how are we going to take that approach in every single one of our programs and make sure a student has the exposure, especially to entrepreneurial skill sets that are going to allow them to succeed. And programs like iGEM, that is a great team, gets together and gets that exposure. But could you imagine what we did if every year, right now we're at more than 7,000 undergrads. If every one of those undergrads had an opportunity to start a company.
Take your time, we'll edit it out.
Can I put my drink here?
Yeah.
It's not a problem. All right.
And then you were just saying, just imagine if all 7,000 undergrads had that opportunity.
Yeah, so if every one of our students had exposure to courses in entrepreneurship, which is one of not just the faculty's, but the university's goal, we would graduate an army of amazing thinkers that would really drive the economy.
So what is your role in making this happen as a dean? Do you oversee the new program development? Do you what specifically does a dean do?
What does a dean do?
Yeah.
You don't know what a dean does?
Just to get some overview of what they do.
Yeah, so
I always hear about them, but it's
yeah, they're mysterious people, the deans. So the dean is in charge of your individual faculty, and we have multiple roles, but our major responsibilities is our academic programs, so both at the undergraduate and graduate level. And the other half of the house is our research. And at a big research intensive university like University of Calgary, that's a huge undertaking. And so under me, I have a vice dean, and I also have a team of associate deans. And each one of those deans is assigned an area that it's their responsibility. And so the dean and the vice dean, we're really in charge of building out the big vision and the strategy. And when I arrived in 2022, so we started a new strategic plan. And we did that in consultation, not just with internal stakeholders like other professors and students, but we worked with people with industry and government. So our local employers of our graduates, and asked that question, what do you want to see from us? Because we're here to serve industry. We're here to serve the community. And I want our graduates to get amazing jobs. So within that strat plan, it became really apparent that one of the things industry wanted was a change in our graduates, what skill sets they're graduating with. And so that's become part of our strategic plan. And we have a 5-year systematic plan in how do we incorporate entrepreneurial skills, for example, in our undergraduate programs, communication skills. And so that is our 5-year mission. And by 2030, we will have a mandatory course for all undergraduate students that will start teaching those skills. So every graduate will come out with those skill sets.
Mm-hmm. So your goal is to ensure that every student leaving the University of Calgary is equipped with entrepreneurial skills, the skills needed to thrive in the workplace, and maybe a startup too.
Yeah. And I mean, wouldn't that be amazing if some of our students start companies? Like you just told me about your great project here. And that's why I was asking you details like, have you got it patent protected? What's your marketing plan? That would be truly amazing. If you spent your 4 years here and at the end of the time, not only did you have a degree and you had amazing skill sets that are going to allow you to have opportunities unlike any other graduates in Canada, and then you came out with a company, that would be amazing.
Mm-hmm. I actually 100% agree with that. That would be really, really cool. So you were mentioning that you had I remember reading about your past history and that you had such an extensive career in science.
Mm-hmm.
So throughout your career, has this shaped your approach to education and changing the way you approach as a dean, like how to change the faculty to be more better in a sense?
Yeah. And so, I mean, I had a very traditional route. I even started doing research when I was in high school at University of Toronto. And so I always had the eye on research and big questions. And then through my journey, I was a very intensive researcher. I'll put it that way. I was a Canada Research Chair, had the big lab, lots of grants. But somewhere along that journey, maybe I got a little bored and I started working for a society that I became the president of, the Canadian Society for Molecular Bioscience, CSMB. And we hit a time point where our research funding was dipping. And so I thought, well, how can this society help? And I went on this journey about learning about advocating for research funding. And through that journey, I realized, well, one of our big issues as researchers is we're not very good at telling people about why research is important. And part of that is you'll talk to a researcher and they get really technical and nobody really cares. They want to understand like the why, what's cool, what's inspiring, how it's going to impact society. And so I went on this journey to teach myself about, and being trained by others, how to do really good science communication, how to advocate. And it started changing my viewpoint of the world. And instead of that inward facing and always looking at like, I'm just curious about X and I want to pursue X and why is the government not giving me money to pursue my own passions? I'm not saying that that's not important. Discovery research is super important. But there is this other side to the story. And we need research and development to drive the economy, to allow Canadians to build like homegrown companies that are going to grow here, expand here, that we can get basically drive our gross domestic product. So that means everybody in Canada is going to have a better life when we have a better economy. And that realization really changed how I looked at education. And I went from a mindset of my goal was to produce, in a weird way, like more little Kristin Baetzes that would be amazing researchers and go on to get faculty jobs, to changing that around and saying, well, what can I do to help that student get an amazing job or start an amazing company, to really drive the economy? And if you think about it that way, you have to think differently on how you train your students. It's no longer good enough to just train a student to be a traditional researcher. And so that's really been part of my journey here. And I really believe that education should be a door opener for everybody.
What would be one skill set that you learned that you think that all students that are science students should have?
Yeah, the number one skill set is communication skills.
Communication.
100%. And that comes in lots of different flavors. But no matter what job you end up with, and I don't care if it's a job at Starbucks or if you're going to be the president of the largest company in Canada or the prime minister, you need to learn how to communicate really well and engage with people. And that's really hard for a lot of students, right? Who maybe they went into computer science because they just love programming and have this idea that they can sit in a dark room and program all day and not talk to other
Be
people.
hidden away from everyone else.
Yeah, which is, that's fine, but that's pretty career limiting long term. So if you don't have those skill sets to learn to communicate, and not just communicate between like computer scientist to computer scientist, you need to learn to communicate with everybody, and in a way that engages and people understand what you mean.
So how does a student build that skill?
Yeah, so you can do that lots of ways. Right now, we do have some science communication courses, and the faculty's ultimate plan is to expand that every student gets that choice, and will be mandatory one day. But there are many ways you can build up those skill sets. So things like iGEM.
Mm-hmm.
Here you have to have that communications aspect to it. I would also encourage people to go out and network. It is really hard to just show up at an event and try to meet people. But the reality is that most jobs today are not advertised, right? They're not going to be advertised in a newspaper or online or on Indeed. Most jobs are through your network. So you have to train yourself to get over that sort of trepidation or shyness and going out and meeting people. So I encourage all our students to think about going to a networking event.
So you're mentioning a lot about skills that would facilitate science students as they go, like communication. What's one skill that science students should know when they enter a lab?
Oh, that's a really good one. I think it's perseverance. Yeah. So when you do real bench work or any research, like it's probably 98% failure and 2% success. So that's something that's people don't think about when they go into research the first time and they get really frustrated. But that's just the way most research works today, right? It's just trial and error and you just keep trying new things. But if that frustrates you, probably research is not for you.
I actually 100% agree with that. I also for solar car, we had the car had its own issues, but that was one thing I realized is that perseverance in hard things is 100% needed. I didn't realize for like research too. That's also.
It's challenging. I mean, there are projects that just no matter how good your hands are or how good a thinker you are, it might not work right away. And there's a lot of problem solving. And if you don't get frustrated, you lose the joy, right? So
there's like a certain like excitement, like you want to see your project work. That's why you pull all-nighters.
Yeah.
So, it's really interesting. So then what's one, bringing back to more so your role as a dean, what's one innovation in education that you wish all universities adopted?
Yeah, that is a really, really big question. Well, I want all my classes eventually to be 100% accessible, especially to students with who are neurodiverse or have, let's say, dyslexia. So it's really simple things that we can do, and yet they're actually really hard to implement. And so one of our big projects over the next couple of years is making sure all our lecture-based courses are universally designed. Mm-hmm. So anybody who has a challenge in reading or writing can have access and be successful in our courses.
So tying in other groups such as, what does an inclusive STEM education look like for you?
Yeah, that is a really, really big question. What's inclusive STEM education? So I believe that society needs all brains on deck, right, to answer the big questions. And we have a lot of big pressing questions in society. And whether you're a company who, wants to succeed in whatever widget you're making or answering big questions like climate change, Those solutions are better when you have lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds answering that question. And traditionally, science in particular, and engineering and medicine, there's a lot of barriers for people to participate. But for us to have the best solutions, we got to find ways of getting those barriers eliminated and ensuring everybody feels that they can be successful in this field.
So then how does the University of Calgary specifically reach out to those underrepresented communities to ensure that they have a chance at pursuing science?
Yeah, and I mean, this is a really complex question. So a lot of decisions are made on somebody's success or whether they're going to enter into a STEM field in university. That's actually decided in grade 2, grade 3, grade 4. So there's the entire system all the way before university that we, as in like maybe not the universities, but society, have to find out ways of ensuring that children don't drop out of math, don't drop out of science. And so one way that the University of Calgary and the Faculty of Science attempts to sort of at least gently chip away at that problem is we're involved in a lot of outreach for students. In particular, we do math camps specifically for girls, physics camps for girls, because those are two areas, along with computer science, that we still don't have gender equity in. We do a lot of work with our Indigenous communities to try to encourage more students to at least think about going into science and post-secondary education. We even have a pathways program where, for example, some students, if depending on where you live, you might not even have access to a biology high school course or a chemistry course, or you never really thought about it as you were going through high school. And so we have an Indigenous pathways program where those students who are fully capable, but maybe they didn't do those courses, can come to the University of Calgary. And there's a 6-month program, or nearly a first semester and a little bit more, where they can then up skills and make sure that they have those abilities and take a special course, and then they can enter our science program. There's other things that we're working on too. I think a major challenge still is making sure all our classrooms, teaching and learning labs are physically accessible to students. We will on a case-by-case basis. So if somebody has a physical challenge and they want to be in their chemistry lab, we've worked with our shops to try to create desks and labs that will work for them. But yeah, it's a really complex problem, and it's multifaceted, and we're working on many different ways of trying to encourage people to enter science, to stay in science. And then I think it's really important for us to encourage students from all walks of life to engage in co-ops, to engage in research, because that's where the big opportunities are.
It does seem like a very big question now that I think about it. There's the youth, trying to involve them, as well as people in university trying to make sure everyone's able to participate in science as well. So there's so many different facets that are part of this question, which is very, because I remember we also had a conversation with one of our previous guests on how literacy rates affect students going into science. So I see how that ties in, even grade 2, even though it seems so young.
Yeah,
those children are still, that's when it starts, if they're going to go in science or not.
Think about it. If you had a bad experience in math, or you didn't do well in math, you might self-exclude. Mm-hmm. And maybe we turn that around and say, well, maybe you weren't successful in math, not because of you, but maybe because the teaching style was not correct. So it's a shift, right, in how we think about education. And I think the doors for everybody, as a society, we need to keep doors open as wide as possible, right? And no child should be left behind, especially in a very simple barrier like math. I would challenge society to ensure that every student feels comfortable and confident in their math skills. And I think we would have a different cohort of students entering all different science fields.
I actually agree with that, because one of the reasons I entered science was because my teachers made me feel that I was capable of doing physics and I was good at it.
Yeah.
So that I 100% agree with that. If you feel capable and your teachers make you feel capable,
Yeah.
you'll enter it. Yeah. So what's one thing that you see as a common mistake in teaching that you wish people would know? That
Ooh, in teaching.
whether it be professors or in high schools, what's one thing that you would advise that you wish was implemented everywhere?
Oh, I got to think about that one. I think just in general, I think we're so quick to judge other people. And so when a student or somebody you know doesn't understand something right away, a lot of times teachers are quick to judge on that individual and think, well, you're just not good enough or you're not smart enough. And I think that is such a wrong attitude towards any form of teaching. And I think, how do we turn that around and maybe ask the question as a teacher saying, okay, what am I doing here that is not good enough? How can I change my teaching style so that more people learn and appreciate what we're doing? I don't think everybody will be an expert in everything. I think society only needs so many biologists, only so many physicists. But I do feel that it would be wonderful if every person in society actually appreciated science, understood the value of evidence-based research, because that would change society. We're in a measles outbreak. It's 2025. That's pretty outrageous in a lot of ways, but maybe that is a reflection of our education system and the value we placed on science. So if every single teacher who taught science from like kindergarten to PhD instilled in their student a love of science, instead of, so often students get a trepidation, like, oh, I don't want to do that, it's too hard. If everybody just, in the end of the day, loved and appreciated the value of science, I think a lot of our societal problems would be at least easier to solve and we wouldn't get as much resistance.
That's a really good answer.
Well, I'm glad, because I had to think hard on that one.
I think a love of science would be very helpful for everything. I think online media has really helped with that as well, because you see like YouTube channels, it's just Veritasium, where they have all these cool videos. Even the podcast now, hopefully, there's just so much online where people who are engaged with science, they share that. And the communication skills really plays a role in that, being able to communicate with that. So I guess for students, just as your advice, as your dean, you're in a pretty high position as a dean. What advice would you have for students who are interested in pursuing a similar path as a researcher who is also interested in possibly more having an impact on the way the universities work? What have you learned from your experiences and what would you like to share?
Yeah, so I love universities. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. I think there's great value in society for having strong, amazing universities. And so somebody who has really wanted to do research, like I say, go for it and totally pursue it. Find your passion, find great mentors, and never say no. So when opportunities arise, I encourage people to always say yes. And that might mean traveling around the world, going to a different place, working with new people.
Or attending this podcast.
Oh, yeah. And listening to this podcast. So say yes to stuff. But that is like exploring all the amazing opportunities around you. And so, yes, there's this linear route. If you want to be a researcher, you get your Bachelor of Science, your PhD, do a postdoc, become a researcher, and then maybe you pursue becoming a dean or something. But I also think that sometimes saying yes to other opportunities along that path, like think about it. Maybe you'll end up, just like you guys are doing, starting a new company.
Hopefully.
That's just as valuable as, becoming a dean.
What's one thing you've learned through your dean position about leadership that you wish you knew earlier?
That I knew earlier. I think when you're really focusing on your research, you collaborate with people in a lot of ways, but you're not necessarily true collaboration. You're still working in your individual problem, your individual expertise. Like maybe I'll look at your project that you're working on. You probably have somebody who's really good on RNA. You have somebody who's really good on capillaries. Those are subspecialties. You come together, you have a problem, but you still go and you work almost in your separate entities. I think in a leadership, as you move higher up, I think the beauty and the sweet spot is when you have teams that are truly constantly collaborating, talking with each other, bouncing ideas off each other. And that's really that breaking the silos. And so one of the things I've done as a leader is really doing everything possible in my own team to constantly breaking down silos, getting people working together. And in the end, it creates better solutions.
That's something I'll learn from. Thank you. Is there anything that you'd like to leave all the guests of this podcast with? Any last words of wisdom?
Yeah, do what brings you joy.
Do what brings you joy.
Yeah, so often we're talking about opportunities and jobs because I think we need opportunities and we need jobs. But there are lots of ways to support yourself, and there's lots of ways to make sure that you have, great life. But do that within the framework of, do you love what you do? If you're not enjoying it, ask yourself, why? Can I make it more enjoyable? Can I get some more fulfillment from this? And if not, I think I would encourage people to explore, are there other options? Because if people who don't feel there's options in life, it's it's crippling for them. And I think one of the beauties of a university degree is it gives you tons of options. And never to feel trapped. Always to say yes to new opportunities.
To broaden your horizons and try what's out there.
Yeah. There's no harm in trying something new.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to thank you for your time today. I really appreciated it. And I think we all learned a lot. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been fun.
Thank you.
Good luck on your project.
Thank you so much.
And get it patented. All of you.